Hello guys, welcome back. So since the videos I released recently seem to be resonating with some people, I figured I might do more of these, I guess, vlog style videos. I was actually just doing what I'm usually doing, which is being on the computer, doing things that I do. And then it struck me that why am I not sharing this with people and recording it and sharing it? And really, I realized after these past few videos that although I tend to believe that I struggle with communicating this stuff, it turns out I can just edit it out in post, which I guess I sort of knew that, but I never actually tried it. And after seeing how well it worked, I figured I'd give it more of a shot. So this is gonna be, unfortunately, another unscripted video. When it comes to writing a script, I kind of struggle to figure out how exactly I would put topics in a chronological order, since I just do it. It's just things that I do are just in my mind, and I don't really think about them in a structured fashion because I was never really taught this stuff. I just kind of discovered it on my own. I guess that's the main thing, is that whether it's music theory or production or synthesis, everything has always been sort of a hobby that I taught myself, and my passion causes me to stay into a topic for so long that eventually I end up learning it in an unofficial way. For example, music theory, which is what this video is going to be sort of about. I was never officially taught music theory, and I remember from the beginning of my journey of being a musician, I started with guitar and piano, pretty typical scenario, but I always refused to learn from people or play cover songs or any of those things that people typically do when they're starting out. I actually really enjoyed just hearing the tones of intervals, which is funny because this is way before I got into synthesizers, right? But these are synthesizer type of concepts, sort of like explained in my last Rant video. But say, for example, on the piano, I used to actually love just hitting all the keys. Maybe that was something you went through as well. But there was something about hearing the way the frequencies would clash and collide that was pleasing to me. And from there, it was really just a matter of subtracting notes down into, I guess, what are scales. And although I was never taught those scales, I ended up learning them, or I like to say discovering them for myself, which I'm not saying that's better than going and getting an official lesson. That's just the way it happened for me. And in my opinion, I prefer that, because I've noticed a lot of people who do take lessons, they'll either get really good at it because they learned everything, they had a good teacher or whatever, or they'll learn what the teacher taught them and then be stuck on that pool of data, unable to figure out how to expand it without further lessons, which again is like, that's okay, you can just get more lessons. Now, the way it happened for me has its pros and cons. I guess the cons would immediately be the fact that I can't really communicate what I know with other people because I don't have the words to define the substance that's in my head. But that's also the pro, is that I understand it in a way that is experienced. So the factor of me getting stuck and not knowing exactly where to go doesn't seem to happen as much because I'm not depending on a formula, but I also don't know it all either. I'm aware of my progress in music theory as I go, and at this point, I've been exposed to the industry long enough to hear people say words that are associated with the sounds they're talking about, and in a way, I have indirectly learned music theory through that. What I mean is the words. Like, for example, I know major scales are generally happy and minor scales are generally not as happy. And then I also know that there are what guitarists like to call modes, or essentially different sections of keys, and that sits alongside scales. Now, I could be super wrong about all of that. Like I said, I don't know music theory, but the thing is, in a way, I do know it because I can do it without having definition or words assigned to it. So again, like I said, there's pros and cons to that. For one, I definitely cannot communicate with other musicians, so that kind of makes it difficult. But at the same time, I can also listen to anything that someone could play, and by ear, I can quickly find the scale, write a melody to it, or a counter melody, a harmony, whatever. So anyway, the point of this video is I was just making some Midis, and I see on the internet all the time that people are asking, how do you write melodies? Where do you source your melodies from? Or they use AI or whatever. There's all these different means. For me, I can just open a MIDI clip and start drawing, and make a progression. And whether the progression is good enough to be inspiring to use right then and there and start working on a song isn't as important, because at the end of the day, you can save everything in your DAW, right? So for me, I like to store everything that I can in Ableton in these little Legos that you can use to build your tracks. And there's a lot of people who experiment and they don't actually do that. They skip that step of saving everything, which is almost as bad as the fact that I've skipped the step of recording, documenting, and sharing everything along the way. So first domino was I worked on storing everything, saving everything. I saved presets for synthesizers, I saved Midi data, I saved beats and rhythms, and now really it's just about finding a way to package it and share it in ways that could be helpful to people that have the same passion. So anyway, if I go into my screen here, you'll see I have already 4 Midis that I've made. For this session on Ableton, I was kind of trying to go for some like peaceful, relaxing lo-fi stuff. I've noticed that lo-fi isn't necessarily lo-fi. There's actually a lot of high fidelity noises and sound happening, but I think lo-fi now is basically just synonymous with relaxation or chilling or whatever. So I was kind of focused on making some sounds like that. This was the first MIDI that I came up with, and keep in mind that what we're focusing on here is just the MIDI itself, just the intervals of frequencies clashing or the pitch of what's happening, and it has nothing to do with the timbre of the sound. So like for example, right now I'm going to be just using Serum with a plain saw wave, and that'll give us a very clear picture of the harmonic interactions. But say for example, if you needed context for the MIDI, I can just simply drag it into a different patch. Actually, I'll demonstrate that with this MIDI right here. So say this is just the saw wave in Serum. Now, for some people, they might actually need the context, and that won't be as exciting to them as if, say, for example, I instead played it in a patch that had context, like this one. And the beauty of these Legos, as I called it earlier, is that they can be reassembled and mix and matched in various forms that you might find stuff you didn't expect. Like for example, when I made this Serum patch that I just demonstrated, I actually made it with this MIDI. Which is not as exciting in my opinion. So that's kind of the happy accident about creating your own libraries, is that once I used this 4th MIDI and threw it into that patch, I realized that it fit really well with that lo-fi aesthetic that I was going for when I made the patch on the other MIDI. And so I even made a quick drum loop just to put it even more into context. By the way, that's another thing that was an accident, because the drum beat I made by itself. I didn't actually have any musical context when I made the drum loop. So the fact that the kick drum is happening exactly when these chord changes are happening was a total accident as well. And so these 2 elements put together, or 3 I should say, the MIDI, the drum loop, and the synth patch, they just sound really awesome together. By By the way, if you're thinking about stealing my midis here, totally go for it. Seriously, I don't care. I'm gonna make all of these available anyway, doing the Gumroad tip thing because I know everyone can't really afford it. I know I take advantage all the time on Gumroad because I simply don't have the means to support artists, but I will eventually. I figured I could just do the same thing, and then hopefully if people find value in getting a digital product that has a bunch of drag and drop ready to go music making Legos, perhaps they would eventually throw me some tips when they were able. So I'm going to be working on these midis live now. I'm going to continue working on them, so this won't be like my last rant video where I already had a topic and I was just kind of going over stuff that already exists, like my wavetables for example. But in this case, I'm going to be demonstrating in real time the process of creating libraries, which is something everyone should do. If you want to have a unique sound, you shouldn't really rely on other people's packs, which is funny because I was just talking about me making a pack for you guys, right? But really at the end of the day, even if you're using someone else's material, it's always a good idea to slightly change it or to make it your own in some way. In any case, the fact that I've learned music theory in an uncommon way already has made it so that way I have my own sound, because it's not coming from a pool of data that is shared by everyone. It's really coming from a place that I can't quite explain, but I experience it. So already right off the bat, I already have that uniqueness kind of baked in. Okay, so the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to make a MIDI clip. I'm gonna disable the scale mode. I'm gonna disable the visuals, and I'm going to show you how to make a scale without the knowledge of music theory, but just based on feeling. Now here's the problem. I can't actually show you that. That's like a feeling thing, right? I'm basically just kind of demonstrating how it works for me. This will at least show you that it's possible to make a chord progression without any knowledge of music theory, but I'm also going to make a few MIDIs in different ways. So right now, in this case, I'm gonna start from nothing with no scale mode, no scale indicator. Later, I might actually turn on the scale guidelines and then try to make a MIDI off of that. And then in between would be going by ear and then finding what scale it's in and then continuing it. I'll try to do a mixture of all of these things, and hopefully one of these will resonate with you and be useful in some way. So I like to just kind of start with silence, which is impossible in this case since I guess I'm on camera and talking, but let's just see. Okay, so already I heard something in my mind. So here's really the key about not using music theory is if you just sit in the silence in the blank canvas for a minute, try and tune in your mind and just imagine music. Like say for example, even if you have to narrow it down to a topic, say you were imagining, like in this case I have the guideline of lo-fi. Just sit in the silence, don't hear anything, like let it be silent for a minute, and then just imagine like you just turned on one of those lo-fi YouTube channels. What would that sound like? Basically it's like pretend, but your imagination is giving you the data, so you then just have to like find it. So anyway, in talking about that I lost it, so I'm gonna go ahead and do it again and then just start laying the notes down without explanation. Okay, so I heard the thing in my head, and these two notes that I've put are enough to keep it in my memory, but I have to talk again because I just remembered an important detail, that once you start laying the notes down, it's very important that you start with the BPM, because if you forget to do that and you hit play and it plays in some different BPM, it might actually throw you off and then you forget what you had in your mind. So hear the whole thing in your mind, click the BPMs, and then start laying the notes down. Okay, so the BPM sounds right. Now let's go back to the notes. So again, without explanation, yeah, I'm just gonna start laying it down, whatever was in my mind. Hold on, there seems to be a noticeable delay. I think I might have some kind of effect somewhere that's creating delay. I'm gonna go ahead and save the project so I can delete some stuff. Okay, so now I just have audio and some instances of Serum, so it should be less laggy. Okay, so this one's already, in my opinion, going to be one of the lesser quality midis. This point is where I would essentially kind of hear where the bass line is and then fill everything in between. So this is like your top line, this is like the lead, the main direction of the melody. And then now I'm just gonna add the reinforcing bass, and then anything in between is gonna just be the color. Okay, so sounding like some old arcade video game. I mean, we can either keep it how it is, or we can even change this so much that only 10% of our starting point will remain with whatever we end with. There's enough information now that we can actually find the scale. So I'm gonna go ahead and start with the first bass note. I guess in music theory, that would be called the root note. So we're gonna start here with A2. I'm gonna go to scale mode. I'm gonna go A, and it doesn't sound happy to me, so I'm gonna assume minor. And then look at that, they all fit. Another thing I like to do at this point is to play the keys that are purple here and see if there's anything in my mind that feels wrong. Because sometimes in my mind, I'll actually hear a mode like Lydian, Phrygian, or whatever. So really that just depends on the memory of my mind. And the less times I hear this loop, the more the original image I had in my mind will be intact. So like in this case, if I wanted, I could go this interval right here. Although that's not originally what I heard in my mind, I'm not so happy with this progression, so I think I am gonna do that just for sake of curiosity. So for me, what that means, since I don't know music theory, is now I have to click on every variation of mode until I find the one that fits. If I'm gonna take a guess from all the guitarist Instagrams that I follow, this might be some kind of harmonic minor, so let's find out. Wow, I actually feel so proud of myself right now. It actually was harmonic minor. Okay, so we're doing a harmonic minor A scale, and we're just going to flatten the scale now and move things around, because it's that easy now, really, with this whole scale mode thing. Like, Ableton is so incredible that you don't even need to know music theory. You can just follow the purple lines. It's really that simple. So we're gonna go ahead and fold the scale by clicking the scale button up here. I'm gonna assume these are common knowledge. Oh, look at that. It turns out there is one that's not in the harmonic minor scale. So let's see what happens if we change that and put it in the harmonic minor scale. It might actually fix what I wasn't liking about the original progression. Okay, so I can hear now the clashing of ideas, so I am going to totally let go of what I had originally because I didn't like it, and now I'm going to reform the progression into this new scale so that way it's not incorrect sounding. Okay, so this sounds kind of wonky and it's really busy, so I'm gonna go ahead and say that this gets like a grade of a D. So this is not gonna be one of my favorite midis. Now that we've analyzed what's wrong with it, I feel like it's too fast, it's too busy, and there's too much going on. So then I could take steps to try and see if I can smooth out those edges. I'm gonna start by just extending the length. So I'm gonna hit Control A, select all, and hit this ×2 button. And then I'm gonna go to length and double it. Now I'm gonna turn on the metronome as well to see if I can get some more interesting timing on the note changes. Okay, so now we have this very strange, wonky MIDI. This one's actually standing out from the batch. This is the ugly child. But the thing is, there's always a way to use it. So like, even for example, when I download sample packs from the internet and 90% of it would seem unusable in the sense of dragging and dropping it and then suddenly you have your tune. If you take what you thought was unusable and process it in certain ways, you might find that it is actually exactly what you needed. For example, I get this a lot with stuff that's like a texture or like an instrument doing some kind of unusable melody. Often I can toss those into a granular or an additive resynthesizer and come out with some very interesting results. In this case, with something so choppy like this, I would probably either do like chord stabs or run it through Cthulhu, or basically a complicated arpeggiator. Or if you're a synthesist, you know, you can even do that on the timbre side. So say if I was making a patch out of this, I can just, for example, I can just take like a 4th LFO right here on the volume, or maybe in 16th, no, 8th. So yeah, without even changing the MIDI, you can still make something interesting even if it's messy and unusable. Okay, so let's abandon that one and just start on a new one. I'm gonna really try and tune in on feeling now, because that one was kind of weird, I guess because I know I'm being recorded now. I'm gonna stop talking for a while and just kind of go at it, but at least it'll be recorded. Okay, so this was not exactly pretty either. I think I'm kind of in a weird mood right now where I'm like doing some kind of mysterious, enigmatic kind of stuff. Earlier, I was in a very peaceful mood in the kind of mindset of like lo-fi. I'm gonna try and retune into that and see what happens. So I guess here's another con of doing things this way is you can't exactly guarantee a result. Like, for example, people who do it the proper way, they know music theory and they know exactly like how to make a somber melody or a exciting rhythm or a inspiring harmony. But in this case, for me, it's more like rolling the dice, and then I'm kind of reflecting my internal mood without realizing it. Because like I said, this is coming from somewhere. I'm not just randomly picking notes. Like, I do feel these notes that I was choosing, but my mood currently is not giving me the result of what I wanted, which was to make something peaceful. So I would have to actually shift my internal mood and mindset to create something more in that line. But like I said, you want to save everything. And then even like when it's fresh in your head, when you first create it, like say for example, I just said this is a kind of wondrous, enigmatic, if that's even the right word, I don't know the definition for that word, but like, I don't know, just kind of a strange vibe, not necessarily happy or sad or like anything's going on. It's just kind of curious. I would make a document of that in the Ableton tagging system for your own personal library if you plan to take time to do something like that, which I think you should. You can tag all of your MIDIs that you create by emotion, and that way if you're ever making a song that needs a wondrous kind of feel, like say maybe I was doing some kind of really trippy transition, this might be the MIDI that fit perfectly there, you know, who knows. And even if it's in the wrong scale, you still have the vibe of the progression, and then you can just change the scale to be correct, which is really easy to do with Ableton's scale stuff. But anyway, let's go ahead and save this with its BPM, and let's find what scale it's in too. So like before, I'm gonna go with the lowest note here on my first chord. I'm gonna select A, and this might not be correct in music theory, but this is just the way I'm doing it, so oh well. So it looks like I might have done another modal progression because I can't seem to find one of these modes that are fitting all of them. So in this case, I'm just gonna find the one that fits the most of them overall, which looks like it's gonna be minor. And then for the ones that are out of the minor scale, that have, I think, what they refer to as accidentals, I'm just gonna find if those are in a shared scale or not. So maybe I have kind of a 2-scale flip-flop thing happening. So it looks like that would be these two right here. And then these right here are a different vibe. So you can sort of hear that, right? Like these are all related in some way. Versus this other set are related as well in a different way. So yeah, I don't know the music theory around all that, but I know that that's happening. So I'm gonna find what this other scale is really quick. This is the one case where I actually wish the scroll wheel would move a drop-down menu, because that would be really helpful if I can just quickly scroll through all of these and see which one fits. You know what? I can't find it, so I'm just gonna say that this is probably some weird scale. For that last chord, I like it, but I actually hear more of a tension in there, which means there's probably some kind of note next to each other, or like another scale breaking note, or accidental. Let's see if I can find it. I think it's basically the bass might be flat. Let's see. It might be too evil sounding though. Well, actually, it's pretty close. If not, that's probably what it was. But let's find out for sure. Ooh, that one's nice too. That one's kind of like a peaceful resolution. Yeah, I think it was this flat bass, because the thing is the way that it's related to this note here. I don't know how to explain that, because like I said, I don't know the terminology and all that, but I know these are related in a certain way. For example, how do I explain this? If I have the bass here, these are less related. But when I have it here, it's like a stronger message on what I want to stand out in this chord, the darkness of it. Now, since I like that second chord too, I'm gonna go ahead and just duplicate the whole pattern, and on the second time around, I'll put the bright one. See if I can change the second time around to make the entire thing progressive. Now, I think the contrast of these can be flipped because the second one is bright, the first one is dark. So I'm actually going to make a copy of this so I don't destroy it or lose progress or whatever. And then on this one, I'm going to give myself some room here and delete this. And I'm just going to go ahead and flip these around. Now, if there was an easier way to do that, let me know. There probably was. That would be pretty epic, so please let me know about that. So anyway. Okay, so I think that does make sense more in this way, but I actually am attached to the original, so I might end up saving two variations of this, which is fine, because like I said, when you're dragging this into a production later, one of the two will fit better anyway, and then you just kind of ignore the other one. The more you have, the better. With Ableton's tagging system, this stuff is like literally that easy now. Like, you don't have to go through every single sample or memorize every single thing that you made in your library like before. Now you can actually just tag it in the scale it's in, the timbre it's in, the vibe it's in, whatever you want. You can make your own tags. That's incredibly useful. And I can only imagine AI is going to make auto tagging more and more reliable in the future. So really, it's just going to be insanely easy to make music, more so than it already is. Okay, so far this video's kind of been a train wreck. I mean, a huge contributing factor is how tired I am. It's like 7 in the morning. Let's see if I can attempt to make a peaceful feeling lo-fi progression, and if not, I'm gonna scrap the whole video. I don't know. It's cheesy, but it could be somewhat meaningful. I'm not sure what to name this one, really. I'm gonna name it something like kind of inconvenient, like half a tank of gas. How about that? Or worse, a quarter tank. So just like that, now I have 3.5 more midis to add to my bank. Just gonna kind of unhear the scale we were just in for a minute. Yeah, sure, why not?